Good afternoon. This is Andy Reese, the Director of Department on Disability Services. Oh, okay. I thought she was saying she couldn't hear me. So, welcome to our monthly forum. Just to start, I will let people know where we stand, which is, I think I probably provided an update last month, and we're in no different or better place in terms of our budget. The council committee that has oversight of us forwarded a proposed budget to the council. The council thus far doesn't seem to have made changes to that, and will be voting on the budget on Monday for the first time for the full council to vote on the budget. That budget includes restoring or adding $1 million to the line related to the provider reimbursement for residential supports, for administrative support for that. And unfortunately, it still includes reducing the funds for the DDA waivers by 1.6 million. The mayor did reach out to the council to express a number of concerns about the budget and some of the changes that the council had made, including the DDA reduction, and expressed concern that if that reduction remained, that we could be forced to implement a waiting list. We will see what the final budget says on Monday, or that's the first reader, so it'll be final sometime after that. But once they vote the first time on Monday, we'll see what it says, and we will consider what all of our options are. But we are required to provide services consistent with the budget that's provided. So if that reduction remains, we will have to figure out how to make that reduction within our waiver. I wish I had some good news to share too before I shifted now to our guests today for presentations. This is disability. Oh, there we go. This is Disability Awareness Month. We've seen a lot of different activity related to disability awareness this month, including just 2 days ago, there was a presentation that Allison and Robin are going to provide. I don't know if it's the exact same or a summarized version of the presentation they did earlier this week about the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the impact that this act has had on DC in the last 3 decades. So I'll now turn it over to Allison White with the DD Council and Robin Schaffert from the Georgetown University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Andy. My name's Allison White. I'm with the DD Council. I'm going to share my screen. We have a presentation today to talk about Disability Pride Month and the ADA. Give me a second.
And while Allison's sharing, I'm Robin Schaffert from the Georgetown University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, and happy to be joining Allison to talk about celebrating the ADA.
Okay, I think I'm sharing the right screen. So here we are again. Happy Disability Pride Month and happy 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act passage. For a quick intro, my name's Allison White again. I am a white woman wearing black framed glasses, and I have brown hair. My hair's down, and I'm wearing my Developmental Disabilities Council fleece. And I'll pass it to Robin to do a quick intro.
And I'm Robin Schaffert, and I am a middle-aged white woman with silver hair, short silver hair and glasses, and wearing a black and white striped blouse.
Okay, so like Andy said, a couple days ago, this past Tuesday, we had a celebration event at the MLK Library. It was the 35th anniversary celebration of the ADA, and it was co-sponsored by the Office of Disability Rights, the Developmental Disabilities Council, the Office of Human Rights, and the Mayor's Office of Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing. And it was a great event, really good turnout, and some amazing panel discussions. So there were two panels. One was the creation of the Office of Disability Rights, which was created in 2007 in DC and was designed to be the primary agency monitoring compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act in DC government. So both thinking about making sure DC government services are accessible and compliant with the ADA, and also making sure DC government as an employer is following the ADA for its employees. And then the second panel was DC Advocates for Change, that talked about some of the specific pieces of legislation or efforts or policies that have changed things in DC to make DC a more accessible place. So a couple of key takeaways from that, and then I'll share some pictures. So ODR was created as a direct result of the ADA. Obviously, the ADA was passed in 1990 and then ODR in 2007. So it took quite a while. But after the ADA was passed, a lot of government entities, community organizations, a lot of people knew they needed to make changes, and they needed more attention, more effort put toward making those changes. So that's what ODR was all about. And then the Mayor's Office of Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing, although created much later in 2022, I should know it's either 2022 or 2023, also was an effort to make sure that the effective communication part of the ADA was followed and supported, and that there was more attention put toward that. So those are some of the direct results of the ADA, some really tangible ways that DC made some changes. And then also on the second panel, we heard a lot about how local advocacy has made our community more accessible. So there were some advocates that talked about the open captions in movie theaters. I don't know if anyone's been to a movie lately in DC or seen the open captions. That wasn't something that just happened, that movie theaters decided they wanted to do. It was something that the deaf community and hard of hearing community advocated strongly for, so that they could have access to movies. And what usually happens when things become more accessible is a lot of folks who don't have disabilities find that they also benefit from some of those things. I have started watching most of my TV or movie content with captions and find it to be really helpful. So that's something we really have the deaf community to thank for. There have been a lot of efforts to make disability access in voting a lot better. Councilmember Charles Allen was on the second panel and talked about some of the work that he's done with the open captioning legislation, but also with making voting efforts more accessible. A lot of people shared really personal stories that was really great about changes they've seen in their community, and Councilmember Allen talked specifically about one of the polling sites in his area and how it was at a school that didn't have a ramp. It had 5 steps going up to the front of the school, and then it had an elevator once you were inside, but it was hard to get in the first place. So that school now has a lift so that folks can get in, and it's also a polling site. And Matt McCullough spoke a lot about more inclusive emergency response practices. So Having ASL interpreters at every press conference that the mayor has is part of that. So if folks remember the really tragic accident that happened in January where the helicopter and the commercial airplane collided above the Potomac River, and there was an emergency response to that, and the mayor had a press conference and there was an ASL interpreter there. That interpreter that showed up at midnight for that press conference was part of an intentional effort to make sure there were interpreters that worked within DC government specifically dedicated to the mayor's team, so that when things like that happen, they can be available immediately. And then another takeaway that I think is always important for us to remember is that the change is often slow, but we still need advocacy everywhere. So ADA passed in 1990. There are still a lot of changes that need to be made. And it sometimes starts with getting legislation passed, but then you need advocacy to make sure that there's enough funding to enact the legislation. And then you need to make sure once there's funding that the organizations that are doing the work to comply with the ADA or to make something accessible, that they're doing what they're supposed to, and that there's self-advocacy involved. So thinking about the employment arena, that folks with disabilities working have the skills and knowledge to know they can advocate for themselves and that they can advocate for accommodations. And so this next slide is just a fun one with some of the photos from the event. We were at the Martin Luther King Library on the 5th floor. So you can see the upper right corner, it was a great turnout. You can see Councilmember Allen here, Director Cook from the Mayor's Office of Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing, several advocates. It was a really beautiful space. Then we've got a photo of Matt McCullough speaking, the Director of the Office of Disability Rights, photos of the crowd. In the middle here at the top, there's a photo of the registration table and some of the ODR and DD Council staff welcoming people. Under that, there's 2 photos of the panels. The middle photo is our panel on the creation of Office of Disability Rights, and then the bottom photos, the DC Advocates for Change. And then over here, we've got Heidi Case, if anyone knows her, very, very dedicated DC advocate. She was there enjoying the event and telling us about other advocacy she was doing related to Medicaid this week. And then under that, we've got some people from our first panel, Ricardo Thornton, who many of you know, Amber Harding, and Eve Hill. And with that, I will pass it over to Robin to talk more about our history with the ADA.
Yeah, so thank you, Allison. I think of disability history as a long and winding road, and I couldn't talk about. I literally have talked about this for hours, but that's longer than this forum. So I'm just going to highlight a few points about disability history. But I just want to point out that on the last slide, you saw people from a bunch of different sub-movements of the disability rights or disability justice movement. There was a movement of parents who started in the 50s, 60s of not following the advice of doctors who said to institutionalize their children who were born with disabilities. There's a very most critical self-advocacy movement, and you saw pictures from that, and then you saw Heidi Case representing the independent living movement. She had come right from the National Council on Independent Living's conference to join us for that. So a lot of different people with different viewpoints and different perspectives have come together to fight over the years for disability rights and disability justice. And just a few highlights of that. In 1977, we've talked at other times in DC about the sit-in, which was led by our DC hero, Judy Heumann, where there were sit-ins in government buildings to force what was then the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, HEW, to issue regulations to implement Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Section 504 prohibits discrimination in programs funded by the government, and it's the precursor, the federal government, and it's the precursor to the Americans with Disabilities Act. So in 1977, there was a big advocacy movement that got those regulations released, started to get Section 504 enforced, and moved us closer to the ADA. At about the same time, there was a very powerful independent living movement organization called ADAPT that was founded and coined the term which we use a lot, and which is a core principle of the disability movement, which is nothing about us without us. Other people shouldn't speak for people with disabilities. People with disabilities should always be in the conversation. The ADAPT used to stand for Americans with Disabilities for Accessible Transportation, and some of its members were widely known for stopping the path of inaccessible public buses. It's now, to the extent that it stands for something, it's Americans Disabled for Attendant Programs today, but in large part it's known today as ADAPT. So really important advocacy from the independent movement, the independent living movement, to make sure that people with disabilities could use public transportation, and also that we have a strong direct care workforce, which is something that we continue to fight for today. We also had, this was something we talked about at the forum earlier this week. Gallaudet University, as one of the panel members pointed out, had been in DC for almost 100 years, but wasn't really recognized as an integral part of the DC community, and had never had a president who was deaf. Gallaudet is the largest and oldest institution of higher education that is focused on the education of deaf people. It had never had a deaf president. The students, when a new hearing president was named, had a big protest and ended up being successful in having that president resign and having the first deaf president of Gallaudet. But we want to focus more for the next few minutes on the Capitol Crawl, which is the advocacy, along with other things, that led to the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we're going to share a few things with you now, some short video clips and so we've talked about, in the lower left-hand corner, we have Judy Heumann at the sit-in. We have the Capitol Crawl above that, which we're going to see a clip from, and we see George H.W. Bush on July 26, 1990, signing the Americans with Disabilities Act. And then we have at the bottom right corner, the Deaf President Now protests that we just talked about. So now let's see some of the great advocacy that led to the Americans with Disabilities Act being passed by Congress. So the advocacy, one of the things we want to emphasize with these clips is the advocacy came from people young and old across the spectrum. So we're going to hear first from a young woman who testified before the Senate.
Reality. Alabama. I'm 14 years old and a 7th grader at the Alabama School for the Deaf and Blind in Talladega, Alabama. Discrimination is a big word, but I can tell you that it is real, and I hope Congress will do something about it. I hope to be the first person in my family to go to college. I am worried, however, that people will treat me differently because I am blind, black, and female. Some people will think that I cannot be a teacher, but I know I can. I don't need sympathy. I don't need prejudice. I do need a fair chance to get a job and live independently. Discrimination against blind, and other disabled people must be eliminated, and the Americans with Disabilities Act will help that happen.
But unfortunately,
So that's what happened in the Senate hearing room. But after these Senate hearings, the bill stalled in committee, and it wasn't moving as we needed it to become a law. So there was a protest staged on the steps of the Capitol, and I think it is one of the most powerful protests in the history of advocacy. So let's watch a little bit of that if we could, Allison.
Jennifer continues to climb. Photographers and videographers wait at the next landing.
Sushi, because I guess we get a shot of it. Come on, Jennifer. You gonna make it, Jennifer? Come on, sweetheart. Come on, Jennifer.
One more step, Jennifer.
Reach.
One more step. One more step.
Okay. You got it now, sweetheart. Just take your time, relax. You got it now, sweetie.
Sorry, right on time.
Okay. Come on, you got it. Yeah, you got it.
When she reaches the landing, Michael Winter joins her and crawls with her. Then she starts the next section.
Take your time, We're almost there. We're almost ready to reach the mountaintop. We're almost ready to reach that mountaintop, Jennifer.
Come on, Jennifer.
Come on, Jennifer.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. All right, Jennifer. Is it 2 steps back?
We can do this 3 times.
Yeah, come on, let's go back. Let's do it again.
Want some more water, Jennifer? All right, Jennifer. All right.
What do we want?
What do we want?
A line of people holding signs and wearing ADAPT t-shirts sit at the top of the Capitol steps.
Why do we want it? Now! What do we want? Action! When do we want it? Now!
So what could be more powerful advocacy than this? People with disabilities literally climbing out of their wheelchairs and up the steps of the Capitol because that's what it took to get them access to our lawmakers. Jennifer, in some ways, very much became the face of this protest, the young girl. But as you saw, it was a very broad group of people who were involved, not only those crawling up the steps, but organizing it, getting people there, testifying before Congress. It was, very much an effort of the movement coming together for this bill, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of disability. And I see in the chat Tiffany Johnson saying, "Rest in peace, Bobby Coward." Bobby was one of the great ADAPT members in DC who if in the days Bobby passed away about a decade ago, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. I don't know. Anyway, Bobby, if you turned on NPR and there was an issue about disability transportation in DC on WAMU, you would hear Bobby's voice every time. And I like Tiffany, like you, I miss that. But anyway, with this Capitol crawl, the Senate could no longer sit on the bill and it moved forward. And ultimately, as we saw in that picture, was signed by President George H.W. Bush. I want to just mention as I talk about this, almost every major piece of disability legislation has, and the exception to that is the Affordable Care Act, but all of the other important disability legislation was passed on a bipartisan basis. As we say sometimes, the disability community is the only minority community that anyone can join at any time with or without notice. It is the disability issue should be nonpartisan, and for most of the time they have been, with broad support across the political spectrum. So that's something else to be really proud of, people coming together from all aspects in lots of different ways to make this change. So let's take a minute now, having seen the Capitol crawl, to hear from Claudia Gordon, again, another really local, prominent DC disability advocate. Claudia was the first deaf Black woman to graduate from Howard Law School, and she's had a number of advocacy roles in the nonprofits and prominent government roles now in the private sector. And let's hear her views on the ADA, if we could, Allison.
Google.org. Google Impact Challenge Disabilities presents.
I was born hearing and all of a sudden became deaf overnight. I was 8 years old at the time.
Claudia Gordon, advisor on disability for the U.S. government.
I was removed from school. There was a lot of fear and shame associated with that. I developed a strong inner strength
on becoming a cross-disability leader.
I got a summer job after I graduated in 1991. I worked for a nonprofit organization in New York called Hospital Audience Incorporated. I was part of a cross-disability task force of individuals, youth, that would go all over Manhattan to survey their accessibility based on this brand new law called the ADA that I knew nothing about, but I knew it was a big deal because everyone was talking about it. My appreciation for cross-disability issues started there because until then I had been so focused on being deaf and my communication needs, my accommodations, but now I was with people who were blind, had physical disabilities, cognitive disabilities, and we were all going around doing this important work together. So I really gained an understanding of the ADA and what it symbolized. I realized it would be on me to become a vehicle for change, to be able to educate mainstream society, and hopefully to inspire hope in people who continue to endure circumstances that I had to go through myself. So that put me on a path of to where I am today.
Celebrating 25 years of the Americans with Disabilities Act. She.co/disabilities and hashtag ADA25.
So that's from 10 years ago, but says it very well. And now I'm going to turn things back to Allison to talk about something else we're celebrating this month.
Thank you, Robin. That was amazing recounting of the history, and even just doing the research for this presentation. I am always learning new things and am always so blown away by the disability rights movement and the tenacity, the courage, the creativity that people had to literally putting their bodies on the line to do the right thing to get this passed.
From view, this wasn't just any way. It was a major tributary of the Nile that once flowed directly past its sites, solving the transportation.
I think we have somebody off mute. There we go. Okay, so July is Disability Pride Month. I think my slides are out of order, but this is the Disability Pride movement is growing more and more, and the Disability Pride flag was developed as a symbol of that. It was created by Anne McGill in 2019. And she initially designed this flag because she went to an ADA celebration, and it was in the basement of a building that was technically accessible, but kind of hidden away from the community, like in this dark place where it wasn't really seen, where it wasn't open to everybody. And she said, we need to be more visible. We need to be proud of our community, and we need to be out and about and show people our strength and how amazing this community is. So she created the flag, and it was modified. Her initial design, some people in the disability community said, I think we can improve this. And so then they got together, and it was modified in 2021. And each part of it has some meaning. So you can see it's a rectangular flag. The background is kind of a darker gray. And then there are 5 parallel colored stripes along the diagonal of the flag. So the stripes being parallel has meaning behind it. It means being together and representing solidarity within the disability community. So you heard Claudia Gordon talk about that, the cross disability movement, realizing that she had been so focused on being deaf and what she needed for that. And then being in community with people with other kinds of disabilities was so powerful, and that together they could all accommodate each other, and they could all advocate together so that everyone in the community could get what they needed. So that's what the parallel stripes mean. And then each color means something different. So for green, the green stripe is for sensory disabilities like being blind or deaf. Blue is for mental health conditions or emotional disabilities. White is for non-visible disabilities or undiagnosed kinds of disabilities. The gold stripe is for neurodivergence, which encompasses a lot of different disabilities. And then red is for physical disabilities. Sorry. Press the wrong button. And again, this is why I said I think my slides are out of order. July is Disability Pride Month, observed every July to honor the ADA, but also to remind us to continue the work and celebrate disability culture and community. The first Disability Pride celebration was a Disability Pride Day in Boston in 1990. So the same year the ADA was passed. And then the first Disability Pride Parade was in Chicago in 2004. So over time, we've seen more and more gatherings and events for Disability Pride. Earlier in the month, there was an event here in DC called Wowability. I'm not sure if anybody heard of that or went to that. It was a series of different kinds of events, entertainment. They had comedy shows, they had music shows, they had lots of cool stuff going on. So one way to celebrate disability pride is to share your disability story, thinking about what are you proud of? What do you want other people to know? And the hashtags that people use a lot are hashtag disability pride and hashtag disability pride month. And if we have a minute or two, if there's anybody, maybe 1 or 2 people who would want to come off mute or put something in the chat to share something from your own life about disability pride and something that you feel proud of, or that you want to acknowledge in celebration of disability pride. So anybody, you could raise your hand or put something in the chat if you want to share something. I know these meetings aren't usually participatory because there's so many people here. So maybe I'm throwing y'all off, but there are 139 people here. So I'm going to wait a little longer. I know somebody has a story to share. All right, we have in the chat from Vernita Moore Reed. I am very proud because myself, I suffer with MS, multiple sclerosis. Thank you for sharing. I think that is such an amazing aspect of pride, is just being open about what you're experiencing and acknowledging that this is a normal part of my experience in my life. Yeah, Vernita says, I used to be afraid, but not anymore. Amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. How about one more? Anyone have anything that you want to share about disability pride, something from your own life that you'd want to celebrate, or some way that you've supported somebody to be proud of themselves? I know we have a lot of providers on here, a lot of direct supporters. So those stories are important too. Juanita in the chat says, I was the first person in my immediate family to graduate from college. Amazing. That is so amazing. And thank you for sharing that, Juanita. To be the first person in your family, you know, when you haven't seen that happen before, you're really paving the way for yourself, for people that come after you. That takes a lot of courage. Thank you so much for sharing. Please feel free to keep sharing things in the chat as we go along. I know there's another presentation, but I want to thank everybody for being here, and thank you for letting Robin and I share a little bit of this history, and appreciate all of you. I will pass it back to Robin. Do you have any last words that you want to share?
No, just thank you all, and keep up all the good advocacy, all the good trouble.
Good trouble. All right, back to you, Andy.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that great presentation, Robin and Allison. And I see that people are still sharing in the chat, so people should please keep an eye on the chat. We now have a presentation from Crystal Thomas here at DDS. She's going to talk about the NEON initiative, which is the National Expansion of Employment Opportunities Network, and give us a little update on where things are with that project.
Thank you. And thank you, Robin and Allison. I think it's a great segue into this initiative. So again, my name is Crystal Thomas. I'm the manager of State Office of Policy Planning and Innovation. The NEON is the grant that we received from the Department of Labor's employment policy for state agencies to improve employment outcomes. And this is our third year where we received 200 hours of technical assistance to support for our initiatives. Here's an overview of our agency partners. And this year we chose to focus on benefits planning. So bear with me, I did a similar presentation yesterday for our provider community. But I'm hoping to not only speak to folks here from the provider community that didn't have the opportunity to attend yesterday's meeting, but to also our community partners and families. This year, we are developing a 3-tiered benefits planning system to increase capacity for our community partners and district partners. We also plan to develop materials to increase awareness as well as provide information. For financial education, we would love to increase access to financial education and develop a financial education resource map. And also a campaign to increase competitive employment. So this campaign is targeted at our businesses to really empower businesses to hire people with disabilities. And as well for people to self-disclose. And so this particular, go ahead, you can switch it. That's okay. Go to the next slide. This initiative will address, and I'm sure that a lot of folks here have seen just some of these issues that come up from time to time as it relates to public benefits. The fear of losing public benefits. So when people discuss working or increase in income, there is a perceived fear of losing their benefits. Myths and misinformation. Also the capacity to build trust through our systems. Having a shared vision and belief in employment for everyone, connecting lifestyle and financial goals with career planning. So working with folks who want to work, learning about what they want to do and what they want to achieve in life, and creating a plan that works for them. Also, access to support. The 3-tier benefits planning system starts with tier 1 for our ambassadors. So this is just basic understanding of concepts as it relates to SSI, SSDI. This is a space for folks to provide any sort of questions and any concerns as it relates to work or benefits. We would love in this space to offer positive messaging about working while receiving benefits. A lot of times I've heard messaging about not working in or reducing hours of work so that people can maintain benefits. So here people will receive proper and appropriate messaging to dispel myths on how work affects benefits. Also refer people who receive benefits and are interested in working to resources such as benefit navigators, benefit planners, and financial education resources. So I invite you to attend our meeting, our training next week on how to know enough about disability benefits, July 29th. The second tier is appropriate for our employment specialists, service coordinators, and counselors, our workforce partners. Again, it's basic SSI knowledge. And this advises people on reporting earnings, reinforces information provided by benefits counselors, and refers people who are considering work to benefit planners. There is more trainings, so training you can get public benefits, go to work, and we hope to house this specific training in Precipio. So that training will be able to, folks from district employees will be able to access this training in Precipio, but we will also post the tier trainings on our site. And the third tier is for staff who their primary focus is benefits advisement. So people who work day in and day out writing detailed analysis and working with people on work incentive plans. And so these are people who educate persons on the impact of their earnings relative to their specific public benefits. Again, here's additional trainings. We had trainings this week. And so now we have the recordings on why on earth should I work my way off SSDI. We had that recording, I believe it was on Tuesday. Another training on Medicaid, I believe was yesterday. And so we have recordings for that. And there is a HUD training next week. That again, all trainings will be posted to our site. All right, so proposed topics. We are in the process of developing materials with the support from our subject matter experts. And some of the topics that we've heard from some of you are work and benefits, youth and benefits, family finances and work. A lot of times our families are supporting adult children, and so it will be more of a family conversation about the impact of public benefits and career planning. Wanted to get any sort of proposed topics of what you may think would be helpful to see. So some of our family members out there, counselors, support coordinators, community partners, can you think of any other topics or materials that you would like to see? All right. Okay. Moving along. And increase access to financial education. So the Department of Insurance, Security, and I believe it's banking, has financial hour presentations. We have been working very closely with them to make their trainings more accessible and in plain language so that folks can take advantage of those resources. Again, we are working on our financial educational resource map that we hope to have a great draft to send out to folks very soon. And within our campaign, again, we hope to increase competitive employment to promote best practices for promoting competitive employment and customized employment training. Individual stories. If you have any stories, we love to hear about anyone that you support or yourself. If you would like to talk about working, any way in which you receive support from benefits, if you're thinking about taking a promotion, but any individual stories that you would like to share as it relates to benefits. So we hope to increase the utilization of benefits planning and services. Lots of times, unfortunately, through misinformation and myths, people don't go through that process to see overall the impact of working. And so we're hoping that people will utilize this service, that people with disabilities will continue to pursue and retain employment. Identify champions to further build capacity training, and have a shared vision and belief in employment for everyone. And through these trainings, we are hoping to increase skills of our professionals, our community, community partners, and their employment journeys. Last, increase the number of people accessing financial education. So additional upcoming trainings, and you probably have seen some of the announcements that have gone out regarding some of these trainings that are underway. All right, so here's my contact information, Catherine's contact information as well. If you would like to join any of our groups, if you have any feedback in regards to either becoming an ambassador, sharing stories to promote competitive employment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Crystal. If there are any questions related to that presentation, that's the last of our presentations for today. So thanks for everyone for attending today, and thank you very much to our presenters for the really interesting information. I just want to share, someone did share in the chat. Greetings, my degree is in history, so my brain is wired in that regard. What I found impactful was revisiting the energetic origins of the ADA, highlights of some significant events followed by current initiatives like NEON to continue to build on those historical actions. The present is better understood when connected with its history. Thank you very much, Cynthia Cherry. Okay, so if that's all people have to share today, thank you very much. We will see you again as a, so next month, our presentation in part will be about the, our DDA's waiver amendment. And so Bernitris Parker from DDS will be providing a presentation on the proposed waiver amendments that will be going to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services for implementation in January. So have a great weekend, everyone, and we will talk again next month.